Okay, now let's look at the problem in the September 2011. Let's look at the problem statement. When you read the statement, you know that the requirement is you are going to deal with two input files. You have student information, and then you have the grade information. For the student information, what you have the student ID, you have the name, you have the credit hours, and you have the current GPA, and you have the current status. And here we have grade information, and we have the student ID, and we have the course ID, and we have the course grade. And here it explains the GPA, and explain how could we compute the GPA, and also explains what do we mean by the status. Essentially, the status of GPA, a student can be good, probation, and also it can be dismissed after one semester of probation. If the student's GPAs continue to be below 3.0, then the student would be dismissed. And I have the example, and this is the status report that we expect you to produce from your solution. So now let's get back to Eclipse and see how could we solve the problem. First one is we need to create a class. That's always what we need to do is we create the entity class. So here I'm going to have student. For this student, I will have 5 attributes, right? We have the attribute of ID. We have the attribute of name. We have credit hours. And in fact, what I like to do is I like to make this to be double. So in the future, if we do have like 0.5 credit hours, we should be able to accommodate that. And we know the GPA. Okay, that's the current GPA, and we also have the status. And this is what we are going to receive from the input. And also, we know that for each student, we need to have some course grade, and we are going to compute the new GPA, and we are going to compute the new status. And let's try to come up with another entity. And that entity is the grade information. Okay, it's the grade. We see course grade. Okay. And for this course grade, we have the course ID, and we have the ID of the student, which is student ID. Okay, and then we would have the grade. Okay, and what I would like to do is I like to generate the getters and setters so that I'm able to access the attribute from the course grades. And I also like to have the constructors. and this is what we are going to receive from the input file. So I'm going to have a constructor of these three. Okay, essentially that's it. And for each student, what we are going to have is essentially its course grade would belong to the student. So we are going to create a list of this course grade, and we are going to associate each course grade with the student. Okay. And we also have new GPA. And we also have the new status. Okay. What I'm going to do, I'm going to make sure. Okay. Good. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to generate getters, setters. So I'm going to do for all. Then I'm going to generate a constructor, but only this would what we receive from the input file that applies to the first 5. Okay, very good. Now, what we are going to do is we are going to essentially create a student manager, okay, or student record manager that we are going to manage, all the records of the students. So let's create another class. Let's name it Student Record Manager. And in the Student Record Manager, we are going to have a list of students. Here, we are going to have a list of student. That's all the students that we have. And let's try to create a constructor for this one. So what this will do is essentially it will initialize this list okay. And I'm sorry, we are going to essentially initialize the list. So we are going to create an array list of the student. Now, what we need to do is let's get back to the student, okay? So for the student, we have already have the constructor, but at the same time, for the after we create a student, we like to initialize the grades information so that it would allow us to add new grade information in. Okay. And also we would like to add one method they called add grade. it would add a course grade to this student. Okay, it will add this grade. Okay, now let's go back to the student record manager. So what would happen is this student record manager allows you to create new student record. Okay, let's do the first one. We say add record, student record. And this would take a student as a parameter. So let me add a little bit comments here. So this one will add a new student, okay, based on the parameters received. And in fact, what we are going to do here is, we are going to use all the attributes of the student. They are the ID, the name, the credit hours, the GPA, and also we have the status. So what we are going to do is we are going to create a new student, and then we add it to the list of the students. Students dot add new student with the ID, with the name, with the credit hour, and with the GPA and the status. That's all we need to have. Here there's a missing comma. Okay, now everything is good. The second thing that we need to implement is whenever a new grade is read in, what we need to do is we need to decide which student has such a grade. Essentially, we try to associate the grade information with each student. So now let's try to create that one. So essentially, this is trying to add a grade report. And for this grade report, we will have, for this problem, we will have the student ID, and then we would have the grade. And the input also gives us the course ID, although we really don't need that, for this problem. But let me just go ahead and have that, so that in the future, if we need to implement this way, we can easily accommodate that change. Okay. So what we are going to do here is we are going to essentially go through the list of the students, and then we try to find which student such grade belong to, and then we add this grade report to that student record. So this one is add the grade report to the appropriate student record based on the student ID. Okay. So here, let's change that to student ID. Okay. Now let's take a break, and we are going to move on to the implementation of this one, and the real logic part. Essentially for this part is, we're dealing with, the entity, modeling of this problem using entities. And we add a few functions so that we can try to relate the information from the course grade to the students. Okay, and after we come back, we will concentrate on the logic for this specific problem.